Hi, everyone. My name is Lenny Minna-Hoppenworth, and I'm streaming live from Indivisible, Illinois Facebook page. Thank you for joining us today. It is June 4th, and we are here with many of us today. We are thinking of George Floyd and his family. There was the first of 3 memorial services that will happen. We pray for his family, and we stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. Thank you for being here. We want to point out that there is a pandemic right now, but there is a larger problem that we must face, which is the pandemic of racism. I do want to point to myself and to hold myself accountable, and in finding ways that we can move forward from this moment and really be mindful of our friends and our brothers and sisters who are hurting right now. And I want to make myself available. Please do keep in touch with me and keep in touch with us, Indivisible, when you can. We want to have these opportunities for us to connect in this difficult time. There are many ways for you to connect with Indivisible. You can go to the website indivisible.org, but you can also connect with us daily right now. We've been meeting like this digitally every day since Governor Pritzker imposed the stay-at-home mandate, for us to check in with each other to see how we're doing. We need to stay together and connect and keep in touch, which is why we at Indivisible have weekly check-in calls. We have had them for almost 4 years now, with Indivisible groups from across the state, weekly. And I want to again thank you for being here. I'm wearing a t-shirt right now. It's Love and Resist, if you can see it. This is Indivisible Chicago's t-shirts. They've had many protests in the past. You might be at a protest right now. Thank you for showing up. Every day we hear about, even in DuPage, which they said was a lost cause just a few years ago, and Peter Roskam was a congressperson there, and they told us, so don't pay attention to that district. It's too red, and we can't win it. But yesterday there were four protests that Indivisible DuPage went to. So we are heartened to hear that these protests are being led by students, by the youth. So look out your window and see what's happening. And again, I thank you for being here and for keeping in touch with us. We have several guests with us here today, and I'm so grateful for all of them for being here. We have Nick Unijewski, who's the senior organizer for Indivisible, Illinois, Indivisible in Illinois. We have Rose Colasino, who is our election security lead in Indivisible, Illinois. We also have Heba Mohammed from Wisconsin Democrats that we'll hear from. We have Terry Marr from Bend the Arc, Champaign-Urbana. And we're so very glad to have a congressional candidate on the line with us today. Her campaign was so close last time that she ran. And we know that if we all get out to vote, we will win. It's a matter of getting out the vote. It sounds easy, but it's not. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We know that process matters, which is why we're fighting for ballots in every mailbox. And we have Rose talking about that later. we're going to hear from Betsy Dirksen Londrigan in a little bit. I'm really excited to have you here, Betsy. Thank you. I want to first give the mic to Nick, who is new but to Indivisible National, but not new to Indivisible IL9. He's been a member of my local group that we started in the 9th District. My congressperson is Jan Schakowsky. I did not know who my congressperson was a few years ago. I discovered that I lived in one of the more progressive districts in Illinois. And I was happy to be able to partner with groups like NARAL Illinois on actions because we have had to turn out on the streets many times. And Nick was there, one of our partners, and he's a member of our local group, and now he's on staff with Indivisible National. I would like to introduce you to Nick, and I would love Nick to take the mic.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Lenny, for that intro. Yes, my name is Nick Unijeski. I am Indivisible's new senior regional organizer for Illinois. So I coordinate all the groups in Illinois. I work with them on a regular basis about actions, policy plans, what National's up to, and really how we can continue doing great work in our communities to make things better for people. We have to address George Floyd. This is really a pressing issue at this time. It's something that has really rocked the national organization. It is a big priority of ours to continue this fight for racial justice. As I've been talking to my coworkers, my counterparts in other organizations, friends, people in the faith community, we are all experiencing major changes in our lives and organizations right now. And one of the things we really should be doing is turning to the pain and the fear and recognizing that there are people in our communities suffering right now. And we have to listen to them, heed their guidance, and really turn to them for what to do next. I live in Chicago. I'm right up here in Illinois 9 with Lenny, but I come from the southwest suburbs in Orland Park. And right over the weekend when Lenny and I and many others were protesting downtown at Federal Plaza, it was the biggest crowd I have ever seen at a rally. They packed the plaza. There were all the streets blocked with caravans of cars, people protesting, holding signs there, with practically every street filled. The moment to change is now. And it has been a solid week of protests, like Lenny was saying, in all 50 states, all major cities, even in Illinois, downstate and in the rural parts of our state, people are protesting too. Now is really the time to act and stand with our Black brothers and sisters who are fighting this good fight every day. When I heard from Orland Park, the rumor mill that Target were on fire and the mall was on fire and just absolute flat out lies and complaints about looting, that's not the concern here. We have to listen to the organizers who are at the forefront of this movement, which is largely young people, but it's a lot of people who have been doing this work for a very long time. And we have to use that anger that we feel as organizers to really continue this fight for policy and making that change at the local level, in our own police departments, and then up the ticket to the federal level. And we know one way to do that is to protest and fight for these systemic changes, that we fight that way, but the other way we can get there is by voting. And I'm really glad that Betsy Dirksen Londrigan is on the call tonight because we have an opportunity in Illinois to truly elect a leader that will continue fighting for justice, not only racial justice, but things in all forms. And racial justice is something that we integrate into every issue that we fight for. It is not just equality. It is passing things like fair wages, making sure we are empowering union membership, driving economic justice and reforming the tax code so the wealthy finally pay their fair share. It is direct community investment in communities that need help the most, in education and restorative justice programs. All of these things are all encompassing, and we know we absolutely will not get any of them if we don't elect Joe Biden in November. And what we need as well is we need supporters in the Senate, in the House, to push for those policies too. We can't get these things by just hoping that they'll get there. We need real leaders at the forefront to put these things as their top priorities when they're in office. So that's one piece of it. But we also know that we can make change at the local level. So I urge everyone who's listening to this call tonight to get in contact with, if you're in Chicago, get in touch with your alderman in the mayor's office. Demand that they are supporting CPAC now, not in 90 days, now. We need massive change in order to make significant progress for our police departments and restore trust in the community. If you are in a suburb, call your local mayors and your village boards and see if they have de-escalation techniques at all and what their plan is for community investment. If you are in any community in the state of Illinois or nationwide listening to this right now, we all have a platform, we all have a voice, and use that voice for the greater good. So that is my little piece for the call tonight, but we have to make change at the electoral level as well. Otherwise, none of these policies that I am urging people to support will get through. With that, I would like to turn it to a great candidate downstate, which we all should be supporting. Betsy Dirksen Londrigan is on the call tonight. So take it away, Betsy.
All right. I think we've had a good classic Zoom call with somebody walking in and me not taking myself off mute. But thank you so much for the invitation to be here tonight. And thank you all for the work that you're doing. It's so important. And yes, I'm Betsy Dirksen Londrigan. I'm a candidate in the Illinois 13th Congressional District. And, you know, in the moment that we're in and everybody struggling and trying to figure out how we're going to achieve the change that we want to see, I keep coming back to registering people to vote, getting people to the polls. Because the bottom line is that if we want the laws to change, we have to change the people making the laws. We cannot change the laws without changing the people. And so as the earth is sort of shifting beneath us, I hope that as we move forward, that everyone will work toward registering voters and getting people to the polls. Because people talk about, well, does my vote matter? And I'll tell you what, we've got a sheriff's race in Macon County, Illinois, and Chubby Brown, Sheriff Brown, Tony Brown, won that race by 1 vote. So does that matter? Yes, it does. And you look at my race here in Illinois 13, and we came within less than 1% of getting this seat flipped from red to blue. That boils down to us needing to have flipped 2 votes per precinct. That's how close it was. And so as we are, gaining momentum and more people, and I'm so excited to see so many young faces involved and really taking the lead on so many things, including these protests right now. We had one here in Springfield that was led by a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 17-year-old. And seeing them take the lead, it has been inspiring. And as we move forward with the momentum, making sure that we are drawing the line for people that we have to change policy. To change policy, we have to change laws. And to change laws, we have to change the people making the laws. And here in Illinois, I'm excited because our state legislature, we already have good vote by mail. They just made it better vote by mail, which I am excited about because nobody should have to put their health at risk to cast a ballot. And by expanding our mail-in voting, people in Illinois are going to have an excellent opportunity to make sure their voice is heard and not have to compromise their health or their family's health to do it. I'm proud that Illinois made it a holiday and gave everybody the time that they need to go vote, as well as expanding early voting. So we have a lot of good options here in Illinois for people to cast their ballots. It is our job on the organizational side to make sure that we register as many people to vote and make sure that they know where their polling place is and that we get them to the polls and that we affect the change that we want to see. And it's my pleasure too I'm going to introduce Terry in a minute, but before I introduce her, I want to tell everybody that the organization that she's with, Bend the Arc, right? It's called Bend the Arc because it bends toward, time bends toward the arc of, I'm just getting that wrong. The arc of justice, the arc of, I'm not going to be able to say it right now. I apologize. But her organization has worked so hard to make sure that we are all bending the arc toward justice. And I'm excited to partner with them. I have been partnering with them through last cycle, and I'm excited to do it again this cycle. And it's important to note too that what we're up against is a Republican incumbent who will be incredibly well funded, who's taken millions of dollars from corporate PACs and special interests. I don't take any corporate PAC money, not now, not when I'm in Congress. I'm focused on making sure that I'm supported by people. And I want people in the Illinois 13th district to always rest assured that the only reason I want to go to Washington is for them, not for corporations, not for special interests, but for them. And here we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and the person I'm running against, who has voted over and over again to repeal the Affordable Care Act, is still supporting the lawsuit at the Supreme Court level that would completely overturn the Affordable Care Act and kick millions of people off health insurance, has not supported opening up health insurance so people can have access, even during a global pandemic. That's what we're up against. That's what we're fighting for. So thank you all for your work. It is my pleasure to continue to work with Bend the Arc and to continue to work with amazing activists like Terry Marr. Terry?
Hi. It's mutual enthusiasm there for you, Betsy. Bend the Arc got its name from a quote that Martin Luther King used that says, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I keep thinking about that because it seems to be bending back the other way right now. And since you all seem to be interested in what's going on elsewhere in Illinois, on Sunday there was a march of approximately 1,000 people, a peaceful march from the east part of Urbana to central Champaign, which is 5, 6, 7 miles. In a town of 130,000 or so, 1,000 people showing up is a lot of people. And as Nick was saying, things must be changing somewhere because our extremely right-wing local newspaper had an editorial today in which they absolutely trashed Donald Trump for the militarization of confronting peaceful protesters. I was shocked that this newspaper didn't think that sending out the military, I thought they would think it was a great idea, and they didn't. And they went on about how it is totally against the Constitution and you do not use the military against peaceful citizens. And if that can happen to our local right-wing newspaper, that it can happen anywhere. It is the time for change. I wanted to talk about problems with the Postal Service. This came up last month when Bend the Arc of Urbana held a meeting about vote by mail, and you can't do vote by mail. There's a problem with the post office, and there is a serious problem with the post office, and At the time, there was a petition going around that we asked people to sign. So let me tell you what's going on with the Postal Service, which should concern everybody, and especially if we want vote by mail. When Congress okayed the CARE pandemic relief package for large businesses in April, there was one business that was specifically omitted, and that was the U.S. Postal Service. And this was by direct order of Donald Trump, despite the fact that the post office is estimated to run out of money this fall. The chairs of the various congressional committees responsible for the post office have called this a national emergency. And you can imagine why the Postal Service is in dire straits. After all, with the pandemic, all kinds of mail are down, including parcel post, but that's not the real financial problem. It's because since 2006, when the Bush administration tried to force the post office to privatize, the post office has been required to pre-fund its retiree health plans out to at least 2050 by paying approximately $5.5 billion a year, something no other corporation is required to do. Since then, it's had trouble breaking even, especially since the government at times has used the money to pay off government debt. With the post office now hammered by the pandemic, as well as a pre-funding requirement, why is Trump so adamant about not bailing it out? It's his long-standing vendetta against Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon and the owner of the Washington Post. Trump is convinced that Bezos bought the Washington Post as a tax write-off to keep down the taxes that Amazon owes. He further claimed the company gets preferential low rates from the Postal Service at a cost of billions of dollars to taxpayers. But none of this is true. The post office is required by law to be the last-mile carrier for anyone who needs it, meaning if you live in the tiniest town hundreds of miles from anywhere, the post office must deliver to you. That's what Amazon is using the post office for, now that it has its own fleet of delivery vehicles for easier areas. In fact, Amazon now only ships about 1/3 of its packages through the post office. Regardless, Trump says he won't sign any bill for the post office unless the post office agrees to double its rate for parcel post, a poison pill if there ever was one. So why should we care about this vendetta? First of all, huge swaths of rural America don't have access to good broadband for email, which makes them extraordinarily dependent on good old snail mail to receive things like mail from the Social Security, from the VA, from schools, doctors, and the like, and also for things like their prescription drugs. One farmer was quoted in the paper as saying that without the ability to get his prescriptions from the VA by mail, he'd have to travel 100 miles round trip to the nearest pharmacy. And this problem is happening right now in central Illinois. There's a tiny town of about 500 people just 15 minutes west of Champaign that just lost their post office because the landlord didn't want to fix the building's health and safety issues, and the Postal Service said they couldn't afford to find them another place. Now residents have to drive 35 miles round trip to pick up mail and packages. In other words, Trump's vendetta is having real-world implications right here in central Illinois. But more to the point is the fact that if the Postal Service goes belly up this fall, or it's forced to cut back drastically on personnel and services, it would absolutely cripple efforts to enact national vote-by-mail legislation. Because if there's no post office, there's no mail by which to vote. Since February, Democrats have been trying to save the post office. Back in February, Representative Peter DeFazio of Oregon sponsored legislation to the post office of the requirement to pre-fund its retirement plans, the retiree health plans. The bill passed handily in the House, but it hasn't been allowed to vote in the Senate. That alone would solve the funding shortage. As I mentioned earlier, Democrats tried to include funding for the post office in the first stimulus package. I'll have to turn my page here. But they were thwarted by Trump's veto threat. Early last month, the stimulus funding bill known as the HEROES Act tried again, putting in language to give $25 billion for the Postal Service. That bill is also bottled up in the Senate. In late May, New York Representative Carolyn Maloney introduced separate legislation to provide financial stability to the post office during the pandemic. It's currently in committee. Basically, the future doesn't look good. But to top off a truly horrendous few months for the post office, Trump decided that now was the time to get rid of the acting Postmaster General and nominate a permanent replacement, a North Carolina businessman and big Trump donor named Louis DeJoy. He's CEO of something called New Breed Logistics, which has had contracts to repair machinery and mailbags for the Postal Service, but no other relevant experience. DeJoy is expected to push for privatization of the post office, which is expected to lead to massive layoffs and reduction of mail delivery to rural areas. Within days of the nomination, the Deputy Postmaster General, Ronald Stroman, resigned. He was the person working with state and local officials to oversee expansion of vote by mail. There is now no one left to advocate for vote by mail. These are dark days.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Terry, for that update. Please, can you shout out how people can reach you at Bend the Arc, or how they can plug in with Bend the Arc?
One good way is to find us on Twitter. We are there at BendTheArc:CU. We are also on Facebook as Bend the Arc CU. I've got to admit I don't know our email address because I never use it. But that's probably the best way to get a hold of us, one way or another. I run the Twitter feed. So if you send a private message to our Twitter account, I'm the one who's going to see it. And Marcy Adelson-Schaefer, who is often on the Indivisible calls, is the administrator of our Facebook group, and she will definitely see your message, and we will get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry, for joining us. Just for those who just tuned in, this is Lenny from Indivisible, Illinois, and we're here at on Indivisible Illinois' Facebook page live streaming. We're going to hear from Rose Colasino, who's our Indivisible security elections lead and voter rights lead. There is a lot to unpack with what Terry presented about the United States Postal Service. We know what we need to do, which is our overarching message. We have three things. So we want to hold the House, we want to flip the Senate, and we need to fire Donald Trump. That has been our goal since the beginning of our Indivisible movement, right after Trump was elected. And that's what we intend to do. Elections are coming. We have limited time to plan and to, despite the pandemic, we were planning. On top of it, we do have a health crisis, and compounding that is the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. So we need to step forward and lead with our values. We believe, we know that Black Lives Matter, but we also need to enforce it with everything that we do in our actions and our intents, and make an impact in November. And we're gonna do that in an organized way in Illinois. And thank you, Rose, for being here. Can you give us some updates on what's happening?
I can, and first of all, I want to say how pleased I am to be with all of you, and also a shout out to Terry and Marcy from Bend the Arc. I've had the opportunity to work with your group for a short time, but I think we've become fast friends, and I want to applaud you for being ahead of the game. They have had a anti-Semitism, anti-white supremacy group for some time, and so I look forward to following your lead along with Black Lives Matter and moving forward during this really difficult, challenging time. But on to my topic. I want to start with a quote. Oftentimes I don't have the words and I turn to those that do. And I have a quote from John Lewis. I have quotes from Nancy Pelosi, but I'm actually going to share a shorter one with you. I've quoted him twice now, but his name is Michael Waldman. He's the president of the Brennan Center for Justice, and they are most definitely at the forefront for voting rights and fighting against voting suppression, which I think are just so critical for all of us to be working on. And it's short and sweet, turning pain into purpose. And I know it certainly helps me to join all of you and to be active, those of you here on Zoom and everybody listening. So I appreciate the opportunity. I also like to start with the big picture and just reiterate this once again, but we want to ensure that everyone can vote safely, securely, and have access, hopefully easy access to the ballot box, no matter how they choose to vote. Preferably, I think, my opinion, vote by mail, but I know there are folks that need to go to the polls. So I just implore everyone working on this, including us here at Indivisible, the election authorities, that we join in partnership to get the work done. It's also very important, as Betsy was speaking of, to expand the electorate. Again, we've had challenges without the pandemic. We need to get voters registered without perhaps having, for example, my deputy registrar cap on with a desk and sitting out in Walmart or wherever I might be at the time. So we need to be creative about that. And we need to mitigate the risks as much as possible. We need to keep the poll workers safe. We need to keep the voters safe. We saw what happened. It was really at the beginning, March 17th in Illinois, the challenges that we had. But most definitely we were in the thick of it in Wisconsin. And I'll be introducing my friend Heba soon. There's much work to do all across the board. And just to give you some quick background, so we at Indivisible Illinois for the last 2 months have been calling into our state ledge and calling our state senators as well as our state reps, the governor, ISPY, Mike Madigan, Don Harmon, everybody to really just demand that we increase vote by mail to, in our opinion, make it safer for voters. So I want to congratulate them. They did take a step in the right direction. At Indivisible Illinois, we had hoped they had gone a little further. We wanted a ballot in everybody's mailbox, everybody meaning qualified registered voters, of course. That didn't happen. What did happen is a step in the right direction that now an application will be sent to a certain subset of voters. Everybody else can go to ISPY as soon as Governor Pritzker signs the legislation, which might be soon, we just don't know, and to request their application that way. And I just wanna say one thing, I really applaud the folks in Michigan. So Michigan does have a Republican state house, and they are going to send an application to all voters. And I look forward to the day when Illinois can do the same. So next steps, moving on. Indivisible Illinois most definitely will support this legislation and make it work, make it effective. And I actually had two really good conversations today with Jim Allen. So Jim Allen is, he's been out there for a long time along with Lance Scope. They are Chicago Board of Election people. Lance is the executive director, and Jim and Lance have been fighting really hard, and just amazing the amount of work they have to do. So they are looking to Indivisible Illinois. They are looking to Rainbow Push. They are looking to the League. And I think, you know, Lenny has said it very well in the past. I think a lot of us, and I'll include myself, didn't do enough prior to 2016. And the time is now to participate in democracy. We see what happens when we don't participate in democracy. So what I've been offering, I don't have all the answers, but what I've been offering our advocates is get to know your election authority. They have a great one in Champaign. They have Aaron Amons. And the first African-American, Terry can correct me, but he is fighting the fight. Let's partner with these people. Let's partner with Aaron, and let's partner with Jim, and let's partner with Lance, because there's just a gargantuan effort that has to be deployed, and we all have to work together to make it happen. There's also a lot of necessary voter education that has to happen. It's a sort of a complicated bill out there. I've read it now a couple of times. I think I'm informed, and we have to make sure everybody understands it. I've seen some misinformation out there, quite frankly. So I think all of us as activists have to really work and fight real hard on voter education. And there's a number of ideas out there, and I ask everybody to join forces with us to get that done. And I'll end by saying, yes, that's the local work that we have to do. But along that, as Senator Julie Morrison told me, you know, Illinois needs money. And in order to get money, we have to help the HEROES Act get passed. Terry spoke about that, and Betsy spoke about that. And it's $3.6 billion for elections. We need it. States can't do this alone, small staff. Also the post office. Yes, my goodness gracious. Thank you, Terry. We have to save the post office. It is a lifeline. And in that bill is $25 billion for the post office. Is just critically important. So we have a lot to do, but as with everything, we feel that if we are organized, if we are cohesive as a group, we can get it done. So that's what I have to say. I'm going to now transition. And I have to tell you, I personally have been spending my time 50% on election authority, election security, voters' rights, and 50% on winning elections in 2020, helping great people like Betsy get elected in 2020. But starting in 2018, Indivisible Illinois became more and more active in Wisconsin, trying to learn from the folks like Heba what is going on in Wisconsin. And we feel strongly that Wisconsin is a battleground state. We feel strongly that where goes Wisconsin goes the rest of the country as far as the presidential race. So that's why we've been investing so much time there. I'm really excited to introduce Heba to you. So for a long time, very energetic activists, advocates from Indivisible have been knocking down the doors of all the different organizers. And Emily, I'm looking at you. In Kenosha, in Racine, Chris in Menominee Falls. I think we became, maybe overbearing in some cases. So thankfully, the wisdom of Ben Wickler and those at Wisconsin Democrats, Anna Suri, they knew enough to hire Heba. And so we have already been, it seems like longer, been a couple months, Heba, maybe a month, but we have already had phone banks. It's just critically important to follow Wisconsin Democrats leads and the work of Heba. And I'm going to now turn it over to you. Thank you for being here, Heba.
Yes, thank you to Rose and to Lenny for inviting us to be on this call, inviting me to come back and share some opportunities that we have coming up in Wisconsin. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge, what is at the forefront of everyone's mind and how difficult this past week has been as our country has turned out to express our grief and outrage at the loss of yet another life, George Floyd, and several individuals who've been put in similar positions and have had their lives taken from them due to police brutality. So, I know that things will continue to be difficult as we all collectively mourn the lives taken from our communities and work together to demand systemic change to protect all people in our country. Black Lives Matter and the DPW supports racial justice and efforts to build a country where systems of oppression have been dismantled. And we are committed to being actively anti-racist as an organization and putting these values first and foremost in the work that we're doing. So we're all going to keep fighting the good fight together and keep pushing for the change that we need. Thinking about Wisconsin, Rose, a lot of what you said about the absentee ballot requests, rings true in Wisconsin too. Last week, the Wisconsin Elections Commission approved a package to send absentee ballot request forms to households where the voters are eligible and where they have yet to request absentee ballots. So those forms can be expected likely in September to hit mailboxes, and it's a huge move in the right direction to make sure that voters are not having to choose between their health and their vote. And at the DPW, that is the priority for us, to make sure that everyone can vote without risking their lives to do so. That being said, September is a great opportunity for us, but we do have an election prior to that in August. So we are going to continue working to reach out to voters to make sure they have the resources they need to request absentee ballots, either by mail or online, which is an option in our state as well. To help us get there, we need volunteers. So we are making phone banks all throughout the summer. And this upcoming week in particular, we are going to be pushing to recruit more volunteers to our effort. So we have a number of folks who have reached out to express interest, and now is the time to get involved. And so we could use help from folks in Wisconsin, in Illinois, anywhere in the country who are interested in making phone calls with us, because we know, as you said, Rose, how Wisconsin goes is how the country is going to vote in November. So we need as much support as possible. We have some local races as well, of course, that are going to be important, and I'd be happy to connect with anyone who wants to get involved to talk more about those specifics as well. I know we are going to be sharing a link in the comments of this live feed where folks can go to sign up to volunteer. Every single phone call counts. Every text message that you're able to send with us, any outreach that we're doing to potential volunteers and voters is going to count. And we know that come November, all of the efforts that we're putting into this are going to pay off. So I will leave it there, but happy to answer questions in the chat or otherwise. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to check my feed really quick to see if there are any questions in here. But also, I do want to point out that it is going to be imperative that we get us to point to Wisconsin, no matter what we do from here on in. I've actually forgot that there was a election in August. Can you tell us the date of that election date?
Yep, so that'll be August 11th.
August 11th. So thank you for everybody who helped to get the petitions signed for those candidates. Can you imagine running for office right now and having to collect the number of signatures needed to actually get on the ballot? So we need people to step up to run for office, but then we need to elect them. Thank you, Rose. Is there anything you want to close out with?
Slow to the draw there. Yeah, I just want to do a shout out to the Wisconsin Dems Voter Protection Hotline. I had the honor with many other indivisibles and other advocates to be on the hotline, and they are doing tremendous work. And I would ask if anyone is interested, you can contact us, we can hook you up. But as they've explained to me, it really behooves all of us as volunteers to sign up as we did in April. Also to sign up now for training. I believe they're doing additional training in June. Actually, there might be a training tonight, but they need folks to be ready for August because November is going to be intense. As they told me, we had 4-hour shifts and I received a good number of calls, but it will be nothing like November. And we had the fine folks of the Kenosha Democrats telling us they felt that the hotline was instrumental in helping Judge Jill Karofsky win, which is, I'm still just blown away that she won, and I'm so excited about that. So I just ask people to join up with Heba on the phone banks. We'll hope to do some on the working Wednesdays that we have with the Community Connections Illinois 9 team, and we've already had one for Jill Karofsky, and she won, so that's why I think. But no, just kidding. But yes, I also ask people to join up on the hotline, and we do also have work in Illinois, and we ask people to join our vote by mail task force because Illinois, Cook County is the second largest jurisdiction. I think that if Illinois can get vote by mail, more expansive vote by mail, it'll be an opportunity for other states too. So please join Bend the Arc, join Wisconsin Dems, join vote by mail, and thanks.
Thanks, Rose. Heba, is there anything that you would like to close out with?
Yeah, thank you. I have to apologize because sometimes in the campaign world, we're just so forward thinking that I forget that just last week, so many of you mobilized to help our candidates collect signatures to qualify for the ballot. So thank you, Lenny, for referencing that. And thank you to everyone who did answer that call to action. All of the candidates that we called for were able to qualify for the ballot. And many of them reached out to us to say thank you specifically to the WisDems volunteers for stepping up to the plate and making those phone calls. So like I said, every call is making a difference. We have a multi-pronged approach, so you never know who will be calling or for what on any given week. So consider it an exciting time to be involved. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Heba. Terry, would you like to close out with anything?
Yeah, I just want to say, if you're willing to put in the time on voter registration and canvassing for a candidate, you can make a very big difference. And we at Bend the Arc and Champaign-Urbana proved that in 2018. We live in a university town, and we adopted 2 campus town precincts. We went out at least 3 times to each apartment in an entire precinct to get voter registrations changed, mostly from Chicago, down to Champaign-Urbana. Then we went out 3 and 4 and 5 times to these same apartments to try and convince the students to go out and vote, not just for Betsy Dirksen Londrigan, but for everybody down ballot. And the result was that in these 2 precincts that in 2016 had a 17% turnout, we got an 89% turnout. And the result of that in Champaign County itself was that for the first time since the 1930s, every elected office went to a Democrat. So it can be done, and it'll make a big difference.
That's exciting news. Thank you, Terry. I do want to point out that all politics are local. Politics is local, right? We know that now, as we are working to push our legislators towards more progressive anti-police brutality bills. We don't look to the federal government, although that would help if we had leaders in the White House. But we look to our states, and we look to our municipalities, and we look to our own local police departments to be accountable. And I look to my own alderman right now, Harry Osterman in the 48th Ward, and do call your own aldermen and ask them, especially if you're in Chicago, if they will support a community policing accountability ordinance, CPAC. Please ask them, call them, ask them to support it. If they don't know what you're talking about, do ask them what they are going to do, point blank. How are they going to push policies so that we have more anti-police brutality laws in place? And how are we going to push our good Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who's doing great in the time of pandemic to keep us safe? But how will she respond, and will she support community policing accountability ordinance that the community wants to pass? How are we going to uplift those that are already doing the work? How are we going to uplift those who have been marginalized for how long? How are we going to help those who are disproportionately being affected by this pandemic? Our African American brothers and sisters right now are asking us for help. And thank you everyone for showing up. It makes me hopeful to see us on the streets. It makes me hopeful to see our youth leading the way. It makes me hopeful that people want to know what to do. They are asking the question. Even if you have not done anything since George Floyd was murdered on the streets, even if you just watched the video today and you don't know what's going on, stand up and say, Black Lives Matter, because unless you say something, we do not know. We cannot move forward without everybody on the same lane. Black Lives Matter, just say it, because right now, white silence is compliance. We must do better than we can, and we will do it together. So please keep in touch with all of us at Indivisibles. Find your local group. Find the Wisconsin Democrats, because we know what we need to do in August and November. Find Bend the Arc and Champaign-Urbana, because they've been leading this work for many years already, and they have been successful in pushing policy and winning elections. And find Rose, who's everywhere all at once, because we are living in a digital world and we don't have to travel anywhere. So she schedules her meetings from the hour till the end of the hour, unfortunately. Please take care of yourselves, everybody. This is a very critical moment, and we need you in this fight. So take care of yourselves so you can take care of others. Thank you for joining us. We're going to end this call today. Thank you all for being here. Do share this, and be well. We'll see you again.